What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. We're here again for another video with a guest. We're doing this all June, so make sure you guys are tapped into the channel. Today, we're going to be talking about some storylines coming out of OTAs that I think you guys should be paying attention to for fantasy football here in 2025. We're going to be joined by Caleb. He's been a guest on the channel before. You guys know Caleb over at 4for4 Fantasy and DLF these days, so make sure you go check him out there. But let's not waste any more time. Let's go get into this video and let's start talking about some OTA storylines. Caleb, how we doing, man?
We're doing good. It's good to always be back on the League FFB talking some fantasy and Dynasty Fantasy Football with you, Andrew.
Hell yeah, man. So we did this video last year, War and I, as one of our episodes of Let's Talk Dynasty, and people really liked it. People liked, the rumor mill, the stuff that happens here at this time of the year when it's all these reports, everybody looks good, somebody could be traded, XYZ. You know the reports, all of these come through. People liked it, so I figured we'd do it this time of the year now. However, I had you bring 3 reports with you today. I brought 3 of my own, and then we had a joint report that we both liked. So I say we just hop right into them. I don't want to waste too much time. The first report that I want to bring up was our joint report. It is going to be regarding Braelon Allen. However, I think this makes a very good conversation for Breece Hall. What we have being reported here is Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer believes Braelon Allen's role in the Jets offense could be pretty significant this year. Obviously, we've kind of heard these rumblings about how the Jets maybe want to make this an RBBC. Breece Hall, obviously, his dynasty value right now is pretty low. It's one of the lowest it's been since coming into the NFL. It feels like there's a little bit of uncertainty around Breece Hall at the moment. And when you're getting reports like this about Braelon Allen and the New York Jets wanting to kind of give him more touches, not even to mention they have guys like Isaiah Davis on the roster, it does give you a little bit of pause, I think, for dynasty and maybe even for your redraft leagues as well. But I'm curious, you kind of eyeballed this report and thought this might be an interesting one. Why did you like this report, or why did you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, I think when we're talking about this report, I think a lot of people right now in the dynasty and fantasy landscape are a little bit concerned about Breece Hall, especially after the performance that happened last year, kind of just seeing a little bit of a down year, especially when we're talking on a points per game basis, almost like 2 less fantasy points per game. And really a lot of that comes down to a lot less receptions in 2024 than 2023. Add in the fact that we see Aaron Glenn come over to the Jets. We see Tanner Engstrand also come over as the offensive coordinator. So we're assuming that we're going to see a lot of the same Detroit Lions style, 2 back sets where we have, maybe Breece is the new Jahmyr Gibbs and you see Braelon Allen as the David Montgomery, and especially as somebody that there's seen David Montgomery year after year of the last 2 years be an absolute dominant force in the end zone. I think I'm a little bit concerned for Breece Hall, and I kind of wanted to talk to you about it because I think a lot of people are going to say, hey, we add in Justin Fields, who is a scrambling type quarterback, where are those check down passes going to come for Breece Hall if he is that third down back? Because as we saw in 2023, had 76 receptions, goes down last year to only 57, and we see that points per game drop off, even though relatively they played, Breece Hall has been pretty healthy the last 2 years. So I think for me, I'm still in on Breece. I still think there's a lot of upside. I still really think he's undervalued in the dynasty landscape, but I think reports like this, if you're trying to target or go try to trade for Breece Hall in dynasty, or even as we see his kind of redraft ADP fall a little bit, I think this is a really great moment to maybe go capitalize on that. But I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts, Andrew, because I do think even with Justin Fields, who's more of a Konami code quarterback, scrambling type upside, I think there's a lot of positivity for Breece Hall, even if you have to look through the reports a little bit to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think for me, I'm not as worried about Breece Hall. I haven't been as worried about Breece Hall so far this offseason. A lot of my rankings updates, a lot of my videos that I've been doing have had Breece higher than consensus for the most part. That's kind of been a theme on the channel so far. One thing that I want to bring up, because you mentioned the check down rate, how is that going to happen with Justin Fields under center? And actually over the last 2 seasons, Justin Fields has had the highest check down rate in the NFL at 15.5%. So he is checking down the football quite often. We've seen how having that, Konami code rushing type of quarterback, it does open up a lot of efficiency for running backs, which I think if you wanted to kind of look back at last year for a guy like Breece Hall, the efficiency was lacking in some departments. Now, that could be because they were stacking the box. Aaron Rodgers wasn't playing good football. Aaron Rodgers is not mobile. He cannot move when he's getting, chased down in the pocket. I think a lot of that is going to change. Hopefully, if this offense does look a little bit like the Detroit Lions, obviously they don't lack the playmakers, or obviously they lack the playmakers that the Detroit Lions have have on their side of the ball. But I think it's an interesting situation. I'm not too worried about Breece. I've seen some trade rumors. I'm not really worried he's going to get traded. I think if anything, he's a guy that they let test the open market in a year from now. Maybe if they're not winning games at the trade deadline, sure. But for now, going into week 1 of the season, I'm not too worried. And I think there is an opportunity here for him to kind of get that reception total back up with the checkdowns from Justin Fields and get some of the efficiency back with the offensive scheme change in a way to a rushing mobile quarterback.
And I think when you consider the fact that Aaron Rodgers last year, think of like the spike week we saw from a guy like a Tyler Conklin, even an Alan Lazard. I'm not saying that the targets and the rushing attempts are going to be more funneled into their top playmakers. And a guy like a Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall. I mean, of course, Braelon Allen is going to get some of his touches, but I still assume Breece Hall is probably going to be somewhere in that like 60 to 70% touch range when we're talking all through that backfield. So very excited for Breece Hall heading into 2025.
Yeah, me too. And I also just want to bring up one more point too, as well as you mentioned, Engstrand coming over. He was the passing game coordinator for Ben Johnson, and in Ben Johnson's offense, you said David Montgomery kind of being the goal line touchdown guy. Last year, PFF rated David Montgomery, it's going to surprise a lot of people, PFF rated David Montgomery as the highest graded receiving back in football last year, which is actually kind of crazy to think about because, we don't view David Montgomery necessarily as a pass catcher. We did view Jahmyr Gibbs as that guy. Jahmyr Gibbs was 6th on PFF's grades for receiving back, so obviously it's very friendly for the receiving running back. I think there's a lot to still be okay about. And when it comes to Braelon Allen, I think Braelon Allen, he can be more involved. They still need another guy to be involved. We've seen guys in the NFL who, come in and get 100, 150 touches, and the running back one who's in front of them still finishes very highly for fantasy football because in reality, 100 to 150 touches in an NFL season isn't too much from a backup. I think that could happen, and that would still be more involved than it was last year for Braelon Allen because Braelon Allen wasn't super involved. Talented kid. I think overall, though, he's a guy that I'm looking at as a handcuff. I'm not buying the Braelon hype.
I'm not buying it either, but hey, that offensive line though, Aaron Glenn knows how to jump from one good offensive line that's kind of going on the down to an up and coming offensive line. So shout out to Aaron Glenn for having the foresight there, because I think the Jets will be a top 3, if not top 2 offensive line in the NFL next season.
You think so?
Oh, I think the youth on the tackles for sure, with them getting Membu for the right tackle, and then you still have Fashanu from last year. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Elijah Vera Tucker in there as well. Some other guys. Should be an interesting offensive line. But let's move on to our next report here. You brought this one with you. You wanted to talk some Travis Hunter from the Jacksonville Jaguars. The report that we have is mainly that Jaguars wide receiver cornerback Travis Hunter has been meeting with the defense as he's needed to. Head coach Liam Cohen has made comments on Hunter's practice status as a defender, saying that the 22-year-old practiced with the defense last week, focused on the fundamentals, the techniques, the communication. Basically says he's not going to be practicing offensively and defensively on the same day, but it does feel more and more so like Travis Hunter is focusing the majority of his practice days on that offensive side of the football, and he is only meeting with that defense as he's needing to. So, that was a big thing for a lot of people coming into the draft process this year for Dynasty was how much offense is Travis Hunter going to play? Because if Travis Hunter plays a ton of offense, we already know that the talent is there. You brought this report with you. What are your thoughts here, on why you wanted to discuss this?
Yeah, I wanted to discuss this mainly because I feel like still in the dynasty landscape, there's been this discourse of a lot of people that have already had their rookie drafts being like, hey, there was the people that were pushing Travis Hunter all the way up to the 102 over a guy like a Hampton or Ward. There was the people that were pushing back saying, hey, no, Tet's still the wide receiver 1 because we can guarantee that he's going to just be focusing on wide receiver, even though we all know that Travis Hunter, if you look at the Matt Harmon reception perception, one of the greatest reception perceptions out there, getting even comps to a guy like a prime OBJ, which is, insanely high praise. And we're not saying that Travis Hunter is guaranteed to get there, but as a guy that was super talented, the Jacksonville Jaguars traded up, gave a next year's first, gave up some extra picks. Like they wanted Travis Hunter and they believe in the talent. And so I think for me, I wanted to just discuss it with you because even this week, we've seen, he practiced with the defense. The highlights came out of him, looking really fluid as a cornerback, but we're still seeing him as a wide receiver. Hearing reports that he's absolutely dominating some of the target share when he's a wide receiver. So I think for me, I wanted to hear your thoughts on if you need to reassure any Travis Hunter dynasty owners out there that, hey, everything's going to be okay. We're moving in the right direction. Or, hey, maybe we need to, pump the brakes, and maybe he will play more cornerback than what we're thinking, even though it's looking more and more like they're primarily going to play him at wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I still think if you drafted Travis Hunter, you should still kind of expect what you expected from the jump. Like, you knew what you were getting into. There's going to be highlights here where he's on the defensive side of the ball. There's going to be days where he doesn't even go see the offense. Like, you should have known that this was going to happen when you drafted Travis Hunter. So if at this point in time you're seeing defensive highlights of interceptions and things like that, and it's worrying you because he's playing on that side of the ball, I don't think you understand who the hell you drafted. So, that's something that I would definitely not be worried about right now. When it comes to Travis Hunter's dynasty value, though, looking at him, on Keep Trade Cut and some of these other consensus ranking websites where you kind of see this value snapshot of where the community's seeing him, they have him right now, with guys like JSN, Ladd McConkey, and I'm pumping the brakes here because I just don't believe that at this point in time we should be having Travis Hunter there. It is going to be hard. This has been, a little bit of my skepticism that's going to come out right now because I have had a little bit of worries with Travis Hunter. Minor, not enough that I wasn't going to draft him by any means in the top 5 of our rookie drafts. However, minor enough that there's going to be days and there's going to be times in NFL games for our fantasy football teams where you want him to go out there on offense and he doesn't go out there because he just played on defense, or they're getting him ready to go play on a defensive side of the ball. Like, there's going to be times like that. I still want to see it in action. He's a unicorn type of player. We've talked about it. Very, very unique. Literally, when all of these years go by and we always talk about generational this, generational that, this is a generational type of player. You don't see players like this hit the NFL, and I still want to see it in action. I'm not too worried, but at the end of the day, I'll see it a little bit more. I'll believe it a little bit more when I see it from my fantasy football production, because when he's being valued right now by Ladd and by Marvin Harrison Jr., by Jackson Smith-Njigba, Garrett Wilson, guys that I already know or have high hopes that will produce at that high level for my fantasy football teams, and I don't have, some of the risk that comes with a guy like Travis Hunter, I'm more likely to lean those guys. In fact, in one of my own home leagues this year, people are probably going to say that it's crazy, but I traded my 103 away. I think it was the 103 overall. I traded that away this year to get Ladd McConkey. I could have drafted Travis Hunter. I just went with Ladd McConkey because I'd rather side with the devil that I know than the devil that I don't know. And Ladd McConkey is going to give me damn good, points every single week.
I think the hard part, and we can still, not to keep like beating this horse, but it's the idea that if Travis Hunter comes out week 1 and let's say he gets 9 targets, 7 receptions for 80 yards, maybe he scores a touchdown, maybe he doesn't, and has some sort of performance like this, and we see what we saw in college, or we see any type of that fluidity, I would argue that Travis Hunter just instantly jumps up into that Nico Collins, Drake London conversation on Keep Trade Cut, if not right behind Puka Nacua. And it's not because I don't think you're right. I think you, by trading that 103 in your league, you're playing with the safer option. Ladd has a ton of upside, still has ways to go up in his own dynasty, right, and own dynasty value. But I do think Travis Hunter, if he hits the full range of outcomes, the top of the creme de creme, we are talking probably him as a top 5 dynasty wide receiver, maybe by the end of his rookie season.
Yeah, I mean, it could happen. I still also am going to throw the fact that he's competing with targets with Bryant Thomas Jr., who I believe is a very, very good wide receiver, very excellent wide receiver. In fact, I personally believe is a little bit of a better wide receiver than Travis Hunter. I think Travis Hunter is the second best wide receiver on his team, personally. That's the way that I look at it today. I'm hoping that he proves me wrong. If he does, the Jaguars are going to be a damn problem, and my Trevor Lawrence shares are going to go to the moon, because if you have 2 guys like Bryant Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, who's better than Bryant Thomas Jr., it's going to make those Trevor Lawrence shares look really good.
Yeah, if Trevor Lawrence can just be a souped-up Baker Mayfield, baby, Trevor Lawrence, top 10 dynasty QB by the end of the season for sure.
Hey, Baker gave us a top 5 season, and he was throwing to Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan. If these 2 guys are legitimately who we think they are, I don't see any reason why Liam Cohen can't get Trevor Lawrence to give you similar production.
Well, and I think, too, people actually like Trevor Lawrence. As much as there's been the down, last few seasons hasn't been ideal. He was the king that was promised and hasn't been there yet. I still think there's enough hope out there for the Trevor Lawrence believers that, boom, if we see that performance, Trevor Lawrence can easily regain some of that dynasty value. And unlike what we kind of saw for Baker, where he gained some, but he still didn't ever get really close to that top 10.
I would say the problem with Baker to me is that he did that. He excelled and he hit that level at 29, 30 years old. That's when he did it. So it's almost like at that point in time where where dynasty managers want to write you off. They see 30 by your name and it's like, all right, it's only downhill from here. We don't want you. And so unfortunately, as good as Baker Mayfield has played, he's going to have that 30 next to his name this year. So maybe a little bit too late for that value insulation to hit top 10. But Trevor Lawrence, 25 years old. You know, we got some time here, man. Like, if he gives us, you know, a top 10 season this year, I would not be surprised. I'm just coming off of a Bold Takes episode with D-Bro last week. I would not be surprised if we get a top 10 season from Trevor Lawrence, if you guys see him ranked over guys like CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams, Justin Herbert next year, if those guys don't play out of their mind, because I still think Caleb Williams can play out of his mind too this year.
Looks like I'm going to be making some trade offers for Trevor Lawrence after this show.
Well, I'm rebuilding in our league. You can come get him there if you want. So let's go.
Might have to think of some offers.
Let's go. All right, let's move on to the next trade. Speaking of, or not next trade. Look, this is my dynasty trade reviews that just hit. That was second nature. Let's move on to this next report. Speaking of the Chicago Bears, we got a Odunze report. NBC Sports Pro Football Talk reports that Bears head coach Ben Johnson said he is extremely impressed with Odunze. He's talked a little bit about some of the inconsistencies that you would expect from a second-year player, but he says Odunze doesn't necessarily have some of those inconsistencies. He's very much like a seasoned pro, saying he's very punctual. He's approaching the meeting room very well. All of these other things. All the good coach speak that you want to hear. A very popular player to be that sophomore breakout, that second-year breakout. And I want to know, are you buying into the Odunze second-year breakout under Ben Johnson here with Caleb Williams? Or are you thinking, you know, this is just more so coach speak and not really anything that we should be putting weight to?
Yeah, I think this is coach speak. And as somebody that if you would ask me earlier in this offseason, I was a big Odunze, year 2, JSN baby, it's time. But then we saw in the draft, we not only see Colson Loveland, shot to the heart. We then in round 2 see Luther Burden, another shot to the heart. And yes, I understand Luther Burden is going to be playing the slot, but now we just added 2 extremely young, talented players into this receiving core. And I would argue that if I look at kind of what I see with Caleb Williams, I still think DJ Moore's probably going to be the one, but I would argue that Colson Loveland is probably the second best receiving option on that team. And so for me, when I start to say, hey, where's that opportunity? Yes, I agree. When we take a look at the report and say, hey, there's probably going to be some really great spike weeks, probably a high-end wide receiver 3 for your your redraft leagues. When we're talking about it from a dynasty lens, and you're looking at him behind guys like Rashee Rice or T. Higgins, I mean, he's ahead of Devontae Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Xavier Worthy. I just think he's kind of in this awkward tier where, we can't put him with the other guys because he hasn't produced, but I also don't really think he's going to produce. So if I personally own some Odunze, now's the time to sell, because I feel like you can add maybe a small piece to get into a safer asset that has a little bit more upside that's right above him. Or if you want to down tier off him, I do think that's an option as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, man, because I am, still a believer of this second year Odunze breakout. And I do believe that he can really take it to the next level this year. Luther Burden, I really liked him in the pre-draft process. He's been dealing with some injury, some nagging injury in camp right now as well, OTAs. That's going to be interesting to see when you have that early, injury in the rookie season. Sometimes it does lead to very meaningless starts to your career. And that doesn't mean that he's not going to be good, but we've seen that happen. And obviously a little bit of a different situation. But like last year, Ricky Pearsall wasn't on the football field. That was for a different reason, but he didn't get on the football field early. It took a long time for him to break out. We've seen guys like that happen before. Ricky Pearsall was just top of mind because he's one of the most recent that I can remember. Other than that though, I slightly disagree with the take of trying to get out. I think right now when I look at that tier that he's in, Devontae Smith, Egbuka, Worthy, I'm still willing to roll the dice with Rome in that tier. Those guys being there, I think I'd definitely be willing to do that. If I have Devontae Smith, I'm willing to move him to get Odunze and roll the dice, because I think at this point in time, we kind of know what Devontae Smith is. He's a good, not great fantasy football wide receiver that can give you decent production, but his offense isn't going to pass the football around a lot. I just think that there's opportunity here for Odunze, and I may be, high on the Ben Johnson smoke that they got there in Chicago, but I do believe that there's going to be a change, and I hope yeah, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's hope that Rome Odunze steps forward and Caleb Williams also, levels up into this next level of a quarterback as well. I think they're kind of combined together. I believe in Caleb Williams, believe in Rome Odunze. I like Ben Johnson's offensive scheme. I think there's a lot here that I love from a opportunity and a schematic standpoint. It just feels like I can't not be in here despite, some of the target competition that he might see this year.
And I think when you're looking at the fact that he was still drafted, top 10 last year, like we can't forget that. And if you probably put him in this class, I mean, you're having conversations, Tet versus Rome for probably the wide receiver one. Because at the time when we were all ranking, we didn't necessarily know Travis Hunter. Everyone was like, well, he would be the wide receiver one, but no idea if he's fully going to play. And, hindsight's always 2020. But I do like Rome like as a prospect. And I think as a talent, I like him. I just don't know situationally how much that's going to translate to overall targets and overall production for him this season. So I think that's where I'm concerned, Andrew. I'm probably on the same page with the talent side. Is that going to account for year two breakout? That's where I'm a little bit more, I guess, hesitant than you are.
Fair enough. And I think maybe where I'm a little bit different too is I still think Cole Kmet's going to be involved a little bit. I don't think Loveland's going to come out and set the world on fire. I don't think Burden's going to come out and set the world on fire. I think Burden's a year two play. Like, I still am kind of looking at this offense as DJ Moore and Rome Odunze are going to be the guys that they lean on. Rome out in the X, Moore as a Z, Burden in the slot. I think that there's opportunity. It's interesting because there is zero receivers on that roster really that profile as an X the way that Rome can do it outside. I know Rome plays a little bit better when you can, get them into the slot a little bit, but there's very few receivers on that team that can fit that X role. And if they do have him run that, there's not going to be a lot of competition for those snap shares. And even if he just runs that X role as a deep threat, Jameson Williams was good in that role, for the Lions. And maybe Rome Odunze gives you a Jameson Williams type of year where he's giving you top, 20 numbers on a season with some big spike weeks to help you win your week.
We shall see. We shall see. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see, especially too. Like I'm more excited to see even with preseason, like what we start to see kind of that offense look like, and especially see Caleb kind of take that step in year two. That's going to be, I think, exciting for everybody, but specifically if you are a Rome owner, that'll be very interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I've been holding the bags. We'll see what happens, but let's go on to this next report here. We got Rashee Rice from the Kansas City Chiefs. His own teammate Patrick Mahomes is telling reporters that Rashee Rice looks like himself and has zero limitations. It's funny because, Pat Mahomes is the guy that did injure Rashee Rice. So now you have him giving you the all clear report, which is kind of just kind of funny overall. But I wanted to bring this up, and I guess you wanted to bring this one up as well, because Rashee Rice last year at the beginning of the season looked like an absolute fantasy football monster. And obviously, very unfortunately, it ended very soon. I had way too much exposure to Rashee Rice because of all the offseason stuff. His price was very low in underdog drafts. I was somewhere around like 36% exposure. And I thought I was going to be a very rich man the first couple weeks of the season. Not very likely. But at the end of the day, this year, Rashee Rice right now, probably still a little bit undervalued. A lot of the off the field stuff still unsolved to some people coming off the injury. How are you feeling about Rashee Rice right now? And, what is Mahomes saying he's all good mean to you?
I will say this, Andrew. There's nobody on the planet that is more of a Rice believer than me. I am literally in the car with him as he's speeding. That is how in on Rashee Rice I am. But I digress. I'm really excited for Rashee Rice here, kind of in year three. And I know there are, still the rumblings of, hey, could he potentially be suspended? Is that a 2-game? Is that a 4-game? I don't even care. Like these reports of even when we started to hear kind of back during the playoff run for the Chiefs that, hey, there's a chance that Rashee Rice, like he was looking pretty good. Like, could we potentially bring him back for the Super Bowl? Which I always thought was unrealistic. I mean, an injury like that's not something that you just bring somebody back after getting injured in week 4. But looking at that points per game start is just so impressive. And I think if we would have even, if he would have done that for even half a season, Rashee Rice would have gotten up into that top 5 conversation in the Dynasty wide receiver rankings. I mean, he was climbing right before that injury. Was probably somewhere hovering right around wide receiver 8 to wide receiver 9 on Keep Trade Cut. So I think as we kind of approach year 3, I understand you got Hollywood Brown back healthy. You got Xavier Worthy, who kind of took that step later on in year 1. We still have, the remnants, the ghost of Travis Kelce there, who can emerge at any time. So I understand a lot of people maybe saying that he's not going to be the alpha, but dude looked like prime Michael Thomas running those slant routes for Patrick Mahomes. And I don't think there's any reason to think that that's going to change in year 3. So I'm all aboard the Rashee Rice chain. I will be cheering him on and hoping that we see a 140, 150 target year from him.
Yeah, I mean, it was really impressive. I'm just looking back at those first couple of weeks, that first month of the season. Week 1 versus Baltimore, 9 targets, 7 receptions, 103 yards. Week 2 against Cincinnati, 6 targets for 5 receptions, 75 yards and a touchdown. And then the big one in Atlanta, 14 targets, 12 receptions, 110 yards and a touchdown. Every single week, he was a top 20 wide receiver for fantasy football. That last week before he had the injury, he was the wide receiver 3 on the week. He was, I mean, you said it, damn near the whole offense. He was the chain mover for them. And he was the reason they were starting to win games. I guess not win games. He was the reason why they were winning games. Part of the reason they were winning games, obviously. But at the end of the day, like, he's the reason why your fantasy football team was winning games early on in the season as well, is what I'm trying to say. He was part of the reason why I think a lot of people were really low on Kelce. Once Rice went out, Kelce started to get a little bit more across the middle. That's where Rice was eating, and we saw the Xavier Worthy breakout. At the end of the day, how are you feeling about Worthy right now? Do you think he's going to kind of, the second half breakout, is that going to affect Rice this year?
I don't necessarily think so, because I think this offense has somebody that, we loved seeing Patrick Mahomes, 3 years ago, 4 years ago for fantasy football, because it was absolutely amazing. And things have just fallen off as a whole, in the sense that they are just running the ball so much more. They've become such a run dominant team, which shout out to Andy Reid for just being able to reinvent himself and continuously get the Chiefs to win. But I think when you're coming from it of, we got a bunch of young wide receivers that we need to eat. I think I'm Patrick Mahomes. I'm sick and tired of seeing Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson in these MVP conversations. And you're just as good. You're just playing for a system that's not throwing the ball. And for me, I think, yes, we need to be concerned. Yes, a little bit maybe, but they can both definitely eat. And I think Xavier Worthy, if he can be used more in that, like we said, Tyreek Hill down the field type threat role, and Rashee Rice can still eat over the middle, I think that's just going to benefit the team as a whole. And especially, like, they've just been in such good scoring positions of, hey, they've had the lead and their positional advantage has been so high. I really want to see more from Patrick Mahomes this year. And I think hopefully their defense just isn't as elite, and that gives them a chance to be in a little bit more close games where they can throw the ball more.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'm on board with you. I've been a little bit lower on Xavier Worthy than consensus this offseason in Dynasty, and I think a lot of that is because I know that Rice is here. People kind of just forgot that he's there. At the end of the day, though, I think Rice is going to be a really good pick for fantasy football this year. Obviously, still coming off the injury, there's going to be risk, but he's a player that it's going to be hard for me when I get to my single season redraft rankings. It's going to be hard for me to keep a guy like Rashee probably outside of the top, I don't know, 15-ish wide receivers, maybe 18-ish wide receivers. Like, I imagine he's going to be somewhere around there. If he looks a little bit healthier in the preseason, maybe I'm starting to flirt with him as a top 12 guy. Like, that's where it could be. And I think for Dynasty, he's a player that is probably a little bit undervalued still because of the injury and some of the other stuff. So I'm all in on Rice. I don't put too much weight in Mahomes telling us that he's healthy. We knew he was going to eventually be healthy, but at the end of the day, when he's on the field, he's probably going to still be a difference maker for us, even with those other guys who broke out.
Where do you have Rashee in your Dynasty rankings?
I can't remember where I had him off the rip. I just recently went through and updated all of those. Let me pull them up right now so I can tell you, but I want to say I had him as my wide receiver. I had him as 19. Had him wide receiver 19. One spot behind Rome Odunze.
Okay. I just feel like it's so, like, I know you can't push him higher. Like, you can't, if you're looking at Keep Trade Cut where he's going, like, I know he's one spot ahead of Rome Odunze and Keep Trade Cut. He's a wide receiver 18. So he's ahead of Rome Odunze, who's wide receiver 19, but he's behind T. Higgins and A.J. Brown. But, I mean, you could just make the case so quick that if he comes out and look, anything reminiscent of his stretch to the first 3 games last year, that, I mean, dude, he's going to go soaring. Like, that's the thing
agree.
Where I feel like, because we've already seen a little bit of it, and I never love buying a player, coming off an injury, because, it does take a while, especially when we're talking a knee injury like that. But I do think we could be talking about him quickly getting back up into that top 14, 13 range pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, my tier 3 of wide receivers is like London, Marvin, Ladd, AJ Brown, JSN, Garrett Wilson. Like that's my tier 3. I think anybody in that tier 3 can go up, anybody can go down. I think that tier 4 that's just behind them, Travis Hunter, T. Higgins. Like there's a tier break there for me in my rankings, but it feels like that tier break is so minuscule. Like I couldn't have a tier of 20 wide receivers. You know, I had to break it somewhere, and so I broke it at Garrett Wilson. But I agree, like that tier 4 could very rapidly rise into tier 3 very quickly, and it's just a matter of good play. Like if Travis Hunter, we just talked about him, if he goes out and plays really well, he's a tier 3 guy almost immediately. T. Higgins goes out and keeps, you know, the hot streak that he had last year, tier 3 guy. He's got to be right there with like JSN, Garrett Wilson. Even a guy like Odunze goes out, plays really good at the beginning of the season, he's going to go up those rankings as well. So I agree. I think really outside of the top 8 guys, which to me is like Chase, Jefferson, Neighbors, Amon-Ra, Lamb, Nakua, those guys are the solidified ones. I don't see those guys really going anywhere, but everybody else, it's here for the taking. All right, so let's go on to this next report that we have here. The next report is Kyle Pitts. I feel like I've talked about Kyle Pitts enough on this channel so far. Every time I talk about him, I think I get in a bad mood, and people always tell me I'm just too low on Kyle Pitts because I've been telling people that I'm pretty much done here. However, this might give some people some hope. Fox Sports' Jordan Schultz reports that multiple teams have reached out to the Falcons about the availability of Kyle Pitts, talking about the Falcons want a day 2 pick to even spark serious conversation, which to me feels very unserious. They say they need a day 2 pick to have serious conversations. Maybe they're not serious about this at all. But if you were to get traded, I want to bring this up and talk to you about it and say, like, does this make you more interested in Kyle Pitts at this point in time? And if it does, like, what landing spots potentially would he go to that would make you feel good about Kyle Pitts again?
Nah, I traded my last Kyle Pitts share. I said I'm off the train this offseason. As somebody that was, fool me once, shame on you. Then it happened again. And then I really had to look myself in the mirror this offseason and said, am I ready to get hurt again? And I decided, no, I'm not ready to get hurt again. So I decided to trade all my Kyle Pitts shares. Luckily, there's still some believers out there. I don't know why they're believing still, but I think if I were to be like, what teams would I have some sort of like rejuvenation on? I'll say this. If he landed on Kansas City and got to learn behind Travis Kelce for one season, okay, I'm fully back in. That would be insane. Other than that, I don't really know like what teams I'd feel good about him on. I mean, my Bengals always could use some tight end help. That would be one that might be intriguing or interesting. You know, if Jonnu Smith gets traded from the Dolphins and they then trade for Kyle Pitts, you know, that could be interesting as well. But I really think this isn't really changing my opinion on Kyle Pitts. I'm not trying to go trade him anywhere. I mean, if you look on him on Keep Trade Cut, like I still think he's way overvalued for what he is, even though there's days and nights where I find myself watching Kyle Pitts highlights thinking, am I back in? But then I have to remember that I can't do it.
Stop, dude. I agree, though. I think Kyle Pitts is still significantly overrated by the community. I think the community's still smoking the pipe dream of Kyle Pitts. Like, at this point in time, for the most part, like, we've seen it, man. Like, we've seen what this is going to be. And there's situations like guys like Evan Engram, who he would be the best, I think, case study for Kyle Pitts, where you have an athletic guy, gets drafted to a team, underperforms, leaves that team, becomes a target monster there in Jacksonville. Like, that would be the case study for Kyle Pitts. Best case scenario is he has the Evan Engram, career transformation. I still really can't get into, the Kyle Pitts hype at this point in time, and the hive is still so strong. So, and when I did my tight end rankings video, people were telling me how low I was on Kyle Pitts already and how blasphemous it was that I would rather take a year or two of production from Travis Kelce than play the game with Kyle Pitts. Like, and you had the reaction, maybe it does sound blasphemous, but like at this point in time, that's how done I am with Kyle Pitts. I will say if he went to a team like, I think the glory spot, the spot that would make the best fantasy football production type of environment for him would probably be the Washington Commanders. If he goes to the Washington Commanders, gets to play, the tight end across the middle in that Zach Ertz role, because Zach Ertz is older, all the Ben Sinnott, guys, they're going to be very upset that I just sent Kyle Pitts there. But I think at the end of the day, if Kyle Pitts went to Jaden Daniels and was the tight end, that would be a spot where I'd be like, all right, I'm back with Kyle Pitts. Let's just try this one more time. That might be the spot where I do it.
The reason I laughed and got a reaction is because that was my last trade. I actually traded Kyle Pitts for Travis Kelce in an early third in a league. So that's why I had that sort of reaction. I said, that's it. I need to go try to win a chip. Kyle Pitts was not doing it. So, but if you look at him on Keep Trade Cut right now, and Andrew, I want to ask you these questions. So we're going to do and/or questions here.
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts or TJ Hawkinson?
Hawkinson, no doubt.
Okay. Pitts, Kraft. Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid.
I'm rolling Kincaid over Pitts.
Okay. Kyle Pitts or Isaiah Likely?
I think I roll Pitts.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the range. So he's like, I would say he's right now, he should probably be around tight end.
But
12
even though
to
I'm looking
13.
at Keep Trade Cut with you, like underneath him, David Njoku, I'd take Njoku over Pitts right now.
Oh, I think I would even take Mark Andrews over Kyle Pitts. That's insane to say, but
I would as well. Also, it's going to sound crazy. I'm also taking Evan Engram with the Denver Broncos over Kyle Pitts right now.
I take Jonnu Smith too, to be honest.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we're looking at Keep Trade Cut right now, and he's ranked as the tight end 8, with TJ Hawkinson right there. Like, what are we doing? He has not performed at that level ever for fantasy football, really. You could go back to his rookie season where, correct me if I'm wrong, Caleb, I think he was like the tight end 10 as a rookie. But other than that, like, he hasn't even cracked, a top 12 guy for the most part. And we always have him ranked tight end 6, tight end 5, tight end 7. Like, he's even fallen now from where he was recently. I think, let me just look at his overall value over the last 6 months. 6 months ago, we had him as the tight end 5.
That's the thing that's crazy to me is, so like, I don't know if you can show this on the screen, but like the positional rank on him on Keep Trade Cut, like if you would have got, like, back in February, this must have been when all the normies, actually not the normies, all the actual very consistent dynasty managers were ranking on Keep Trade Cut, because he got all the way down to tight end 13. And then I think the hive came back. I think people made it their mission to get him back up in the rankings on Keep Trade Cut, because now he's back at tight end 8. Like, what changed over the last 3.5 months to be sitting here and being like, oh yeah, now he's tight end 8? I don't know.
I'll tell you what, February, when he was down at tight end 13, he had just lost you your fucking league. He lost you your league, and people hated Kyle Pitts, and that's why he was tight end 13. And guys like David Njoku, who helped you win your league, played better than him. Kraft played better than him. All these other guys played better than him. Jonnu Smith. And people were like, I like these players because they helped me win, and Kyle Pitts made me lose. That's why people ranked him there. And we're far enough removed from the season at this point where people are like, oh yeah, I do like Kyle Pitts. But they forgot that he lost you your damn league.
Craziness. You guys are crazy out there, but thanks for making Kyle, like Dalton, Dalton Kincaid, Tucker, Kraft. Thanks for putting their value down, because at least I can buy some cheaper tight ends that are better,
Yeah, if Kyle Pitts ever hits and becomes elite, my fantasy receipts list that I'm going to have on Kyle Pitts is going to be endless. I've trashed him for 2 years now. But let's move on to our next report here. The next report I have is from you. Says Jets head coach Aaron Glenn again tells reporters that he plans to give Garrett Wilson the football as much as possible. Look, the fantasy football drumbeat is being beaten for Garrett Wilson right now. A lot of people have been very high on Garrett Wilson over the last couple of years. Obviously, he's been a favorite, a darling, a dynasty darling at that. And now you have him here where they just keep saying over and over and over again, we're going to feed him the damn ball. And the offensive system is coming from a system where Amon-Ra St. Brown was fed the damn ball and became a very, very lucrative fantasy football option. I got to ask you, are you buying this coach speak for Garrett Wilson? Do you think that we could have a career year with Garrett Wilson here with Justin Fields, or are you still worried because of the environment that Garrett Wilson is currently sitting in?
I am a sicko for Garrett Wilson. I fully admit it. As much as Kyle Pitts, I got off that train, hot to split. I don't think I'll ever get off the Garrett Wilson train. As long as I keep staring at target numbers like 153, 168, 147 over the last 3 seasons, sign me the heck up again. I'm ready to get hurt. As much as last year kind of sucked for him, Andrew, like in the sense that we saw some pretty elite games early on in the season. We saw it took, about 4 to 5 games for him and Aaron Rodgers finally to get on the same page, and then boom, it clicked. We were seeing insane target shares. And then, of course, Aaron Rodgers had to go call his ex-girlfriend and get Devontae Adams onto the team. And, then they made sweet, sweet music, and poor Garrett Wilson just kind of went downhill from there. I still am buying in, and I understand we've already talked about the Jets earlier in the episode, but I understand the worry about Justin Fields maybe not being the most prolific passer. But if the target share gets condensed and Garrett Wilson can still end up with the same amount, even better targets. Like last year, he had a 26% target share. Like if he stays with that and maybe even gets higher at a 28 to 29, because I do think he's that talented of a wide receiver. I don't think that's ever been a question, because we do think he runs really good routes. He gets really great separation. It's always on the field when they're throwing the ball. And he, like you said, he's always a top, 7 target earner. Then all of a sudden, I want to be back in on Garrett Wilson. I think the only worry that I have for Garrett Wilson, and I think we kind of talked about this earlier on, is in this new Justin Fields, Aaron Glenn type offense, are we just going to have less passing attempts? Because the Jets last year, as much as I'm saying all this, they were a super pass happy team. And so if even those passing attempts go down significantly, which I think a lot of people in the space and people that are making projections are thinking might happen, that could be the only thing that actually holds Garrett Wilson back. But I'm still taking the bet. I'm saying, hey, this is DJ Moore 2.0 for Justin Fields, and I'm buying into the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my arguments, was that we've seen Justin Fields, give a wide receiver his career year, and that was DJ Moore. I think really when it comes down to it, like you said, I don't need to, add on too much about the argument for why Garrett Wilson is good. Garrett Wilson's a damn good player. You mentioned 26% target share last year. He's done 25% target share or better every single year of his career. He's never had less than a 25% target share. He's been a damn target monster. And I think this year you could see, like, even if the passing numbers come down from a volume standpoint, the share can still be massive. I think he could push 30% this year potentially with that offense that they have there in New York. I'm going to list you some of the receivers. You tell me how many of them you're interested in. Allen Lazard, Josh Reynolds, Malachi Corley, Arian Smith, Tyler Johnson, Xavier Gibson. Do any of these guys interest you at all? Do they pose any type of target threat to you?
The only guy, and you didn't say his name, but that's only because he's a tight end. I think Mason Taylor has some potential there, but that's it at tight end.
Exactly. So that was going to be my point, is like, outside of Mason Taylor on this offense, there's nobody like to throw the football to. And so when we are trying to project the New York Jets, I know I just went on and talked about how I think Breece Hall can get some of the receiving numbers back up and things like that. Like, this offense is going to be very, very, very condensed. In the way that I'm looking at it, there's maybe 3 players on this offense, 3 playmakers that are going to make this run. And outside of that, it's a needle in a haystack, a drop in the bucket. Nobody even knows who the hell is going to emerge. If you want to really, in Dynasty Fantasy Football, take some very, very cheap dart throws, Arian Smith, Malachi Corley, former young guys that have been drafted over the last couple of years, maybe. But I'm telling you right now, it's going to be super consolidated. Taylor, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, that's going to make this engine run. And obviously they're going to use Justin Fields' legs, but I think that there's still going to be enough opportunity for these players to eat, despite us thinking that offense is probably not going to be the greatest offense this year.
So I know we talked about it from a dynasty lens, where we would have Garrett Wilson, because we talked about the rankings earlier, but like in redraft, where do you feel comfortable taking him this year?
He's probably a guy that I'm looking at like 3rd round, maybe 4th round is probably where I'm looking at pulling the trigger on him. I could imagine taking a few running backs before him. I probably have 13, maybe 14 wide receivers that I'd take above him. I'll play the game. Let me go through and look at some of these wide receivers here. I'll tell you the ones definitely that I will take. I'm going to save you guys the fluff with the Lamb, Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Chase. You guys know those guys. I think where we can start having the conversation is, like, I would go London over Garrett Wilson right now. I probably am going to rip Lad McConkey over Garrett Wilson this year.
Okay.
I'm going to go A.J. Brown still. I think T. Higgins is somebody that we can still take over Garrett Wilson.
Amen. Yep.
And then I think at that point, we can start having conversations of this is where Garrett can go. That would put him in that range with like JSN and Rice, who I think you can argue both of those guys might go over Garrett. Maybe Garrett over Rice with the injury. I don't know. We'll see how that one goes. But also I think Devontae Adams probably I would take over Garrett Wilson, who's ranked a little bit lower, I think, for some people because of the age. There's some names there, you know what I mean? But like I think he's a guy that you take in the 3rd or 4th round.
Yeah, I'm there. He probably like that range of like Devontae Adams, Terry McLaurin, Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson. That's probably, but I'm with you. Hopefully we get better news for Rice. Otherwise, I'll be taking Rice higher.
Yeah, if you have to take on the clock and it's Marvin or Garrett, who are you taking?
Probably Garrett, just because we know that he's like, I feel like we know Garrett Wilson's a good wide receiver. We just have felt like things have not gone his way. Whereas, not that I'm not saying that I don't think Marvin Harrison's a good wide receiver, because I'm a Buckeye fan. So of course I think any of these guys that come out are good, but I'm not convinced that Kyler's going to be able to get him the volume that he's going to need, and get on the same page, or that even Drew Pesnick is not going to use him just as a sacrificial act, and that we're going to use, can we learn to do some crossing routes? Because when they played against the Dolphins and they actually ran Marvin Harrison Jr. like across the formation, and he had a monster day, and it's like then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the Bucs, let's not do it again the rest of the season. So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
guess I hope there's a little more creativity for him.
It was just splashes here and there last year. Like against the Rams, he was the number one wide receiver on the week. But that was because he got into the end zone twice. I remember that day because it was like Marvin Harrison Jr. has arrived, and that was like early, like week 2, I think, in the season. He had a couple top 12, top 15 performances, top 24 performances. Like it was few and far between. But that middle of the season, man, from week 5 to basically week 5 to on, it just felt like they were really not using him the way that they needed to. But yeah, I'm with you. I really do believe that if I was on the clock and I had to make the decision between Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson today, I think I'm going Adams. Like I'm very high on Adams this year. I think Adams has another one, in the system for a top 5-ish type of season.
He's a better Cooper Kupp, so lock and load, baby. Lock and load.
Hey, we saw last year when Kupp and Puka were just giving us banger weeks, like for fantasy. Like we were just getting like 30, 25 point weeks out of them. So I think Adams can do it with Puka, and I don't think either of those guys is going to hurt the other.
100%. Same page.
Just buy Stafford. That's what you need to do. Let's go to the last report. It's going to be Travis Etienne for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Lots of rumblings over the last little while about how the Jaguars don't like Travis Etienne, and the Jaguars want to trade Travis Etienne. Well, Jaguars head coach Liam Cohen said that the reports of the team looking to part ways with Travis Etienne are absolutely inaccurate. Said multiple people in the league believed that the Jaguars were not so high on Etienne. He says that's false. Obviously, they drafted Bashal Tutin in the 4th round in April's draft. The quote from Cohen says, Etienne has done everything we've asked him to do. He dismissed any ideas of splits between the two sides. Basically, really what he's doing is shutting down those trade rumors for Travis Etienne. And this is something that I wanted to bring up because I had a take here on our Bold Takes episode with D-Bro, and I'm kind of under the impression, the way that I'm operating this year, I just have this feeling that Travis Etienne is the guy that everybody wants to put away in that backfield. Nobody wants Travis Etienne. They all want Bashal Tutin. They all want Tank Bigsby even. I have a strong feeling that Travis Etienne is probably going to end up very fantasy relevant for us, and people are treating him like he's left for dead. How do you feel about this backfield? I know you're a big Bashal fan. I know you like Bashal Tutin, but how do you feel about Etienne in this backfield this year in 2025?
Yeah, I was a big Bashal fan until he freaking got the ball first day at practice, looking all sexy back there with his intense speed, and then he fumbles it. And that's when I knew the dream is dead. And not actually, but I really feel like I always assumed Travis Etienne was going to be the one. And that's why I was trying to trade with you in all of our dynasty leagues together for all your Travis Etienne shares. You weren't biting because you knew good and well what Travis Etienne is. And I think the downside of what we saw last year, yes, that was unfortunate. I'm still very much a fan of Travis Etienne. I think he's still going to be the RB1. And especially as we were talking through, the wide receivers with Bryant Thomas Jr. And Travis Hunter, if this offense is taking that next step, if we see Trevor Lawrence absolutely get better and take those next steps, that's only going to increase the scoring opportunities for the whole offense, but that's going to increase the amount of times that I think the Jacksonville Jaguars should be in really good situations, in the 3rd and 4th quarter where they can then run the ball with Travis Etienne, because I do still think Travis Etienne is the most explosive and best running back that they have. And so I think this will be a Tutin Travis Etienne backfield. I'm not convinced on Tank Bigsby. I listened to the same episode with you and D-Bro. D-Bro brought some really great facts with Tank Bigsby being, one of the most explosive backs last year. Hyper efficient. I understand all of that. Love you, D-Bro, if you're watching this. But I do still lean that it's going to be Tutin, because you had Gladstone called him out in his interview process, wanted him, got him. So you add him, you add Etienne. I think those two in tandem are going to be the pair. But I do think Etienne is, of course, going to be getting majority of those touches, especially those fantasy football relevant touches inside the end zone. That's what I want.
Yeah, I mean, look, dude, he just feels to me one of the clearest, low risk, high upside type of buys in Dynasty all year so far this offseason. Like, he's a player that is being valued in what I would call the low end, like short term starter type of tier. He's with guys like Tank Bigsby, Jordan Mason, Tajay Spears, Jalen Warren, like the Tyrone Tracy's. Like, he's there with those guys. And I know that Travis Etienne did not give us what we wanted last year. He burnt me. I'll be the first to admit, man, I had him as my guy last year. People who've been around the channel for a year, they know I was high on Travis Etienne. I talked so much about how much I like Travis Etienne. I made him a guy that I was like, I need to get him in every draft. Yeah, that fucking hurt. It hurt to draft Travis Etienne, and he burned me, and it hurt, man. But at the end of the day, maybe I can't quit. Maybe I'm just too stubborn to give up. But I think right now, where he's being valued, I'm throwing those darts at him all day long, because I still firmly believe that from a standpoint of talent and talent alone, he's in the conversation with guys like James Cook, Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker. Like, Travis Etienne is that type of talent on the football field. It's just a matter of getting him in the right situation and getting him healthy. He wasn't healthy last year, and yeah, I'm just willing to buy into that. If you can go get him, I mean, I'll tell you, some of the offers that I've been getting for Etienne where I have him have been abysmal. Like, people are throwing me like third rounders and some bullshit. Like, I don't care, but I'll tell you, I'd happily go give a late second round pick on a contending roster. If I needed running back help, I'll give you a late second.
Well, goodness gracious, I've been trying to buy him all offseason. Just throw me under the bus, Andrew, with my third round offers. Goodness. I'm just trying. But you know what's...
I was going to say, I got one today, and it was like, I can't even remember. It was some player that's like a barely startable player, even when the starters are injured in front of him. It was like a barely startable player, even when the situation's right, and a 4th round and a 5th round pick. It was like, I just don't give a shit. Why are you sending this into my inbox?
I just don't think I've realized, like, I haven't looked at Travis Etienne's KTC value. The fact that he is actually going behind Tootin, 4 spots behind Tootin, is crazy to me. Like, Tyrone Tracy, we're taking ahead of Travis Etienne right now. Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones. Like, you know what's actually, and you keep looking up like the board, like Trey Benson, RB31. Like, you're really telling me we're taking Trey Benson over Travis Etienne? We must be just absolutely hoes on Travis Etienne, or you know, the Kyle Pitts truthers are Travis Etienne haters. That's what has to be happening out in the streets. So anyway, no, I'm in on Travis Etienne. Andrew, I'll send you some offers after this in the league, because I want some Travis Etienne.
All right, let's just make them worth my while, man. That's all I'm asking of you, is make them worth my while, so I'm not opening the app for no reason. I want to talk a little. I'm not quite done with Etienne. I will mention one more thing, because let's be real about last year. Etienne got injured in week 7. He got injured in week 6, actually, is when he got hurt, but then he missed week 7, week 8, so on. The start of the year, when Travis Etienne was healthy, fully healthy, coming into the season. Week 1 against Miami, he was the running back 28. Not going to get you super excited, but it is what it is. Week 2, running back 21. Week 3, running back 21. Week 5, running back 29. Like, these aren't great numbers. The Jags offense wasn't good last year. They weren't doing anything well, and somehow Etienne was still giving you flex-worthy numbers in your lineup. Now, based off of last year's ADP, last year's evaluation, that was not acceptable. That was not going to give you what you wanted. But even if Etienne just goes out this year and gives you flex-worthy numbers, Travis Etienne is a value still at this current cost. That's what I'm saying. And it's not necessarily the reason why. I'm not telling you guys that I think Etienne's going to bounce into a top 10 guy. I'm not saying I think he's going to be a top 12 guy. I'm saying if he goes out and gives you flex-worthy production, he's a player that's still a value at his current cost, and a former first-round pick where if the Jags don't want to re-up, another team is going to likely want to come in and get him to bring him into their backfield and use him as a guy in their backfield.
I'm making my offers, Andrew. You're selling me. I was the idiot. I will say this: if you've made it this far through the video, you'll get to hear an absolute buffoon trade I made last year. Right when Bucky Irving was breaking out, I actually traded away Bucky Irving for Travis Etienne, because I was like, yep, I was like, yep, I'm like, Travis Etienne, he's him, and clearly wasn't. I regret that trade very dearly. As we've seen Bucky Irving become a top,
buy the dip.
You know what? Yeah, I mean, absolutely got bent over in that trade, but we digress. Yeah. We have fun. This is why we play the sport. But I still I'm pretty high on Travis Etienne going forward, because I do believe in the talent, and especially too, like, if this year, not that it's going to go abysmally, but like, even if it's a good year, not a great year, like, he's still entering free agency next year and will end up probably somewhere different. Like, he still has the pedigree that he's going to end up on a team. He's going to get an opportunity next year. So I'm definitely with you, buying in on Travis Etienne.
You kidding me? If Jerry Jones is out here asking Javonte Williams to come play, Jerry Jones is going to ask Travis Etienne to come play some football. So he should be fine. At the end of the day, we'll see what happens. But that is 7 NFL storylines we thought were interesting that we wanted to discuss here today. Let us know what you guys think down in the comments below. You know, we had a lot of stuff here that we talked about. Etienne, Pitts, there's going to be some polarizing stuff. Let us know in the comments. If you guys are down there though, as you pass that subscribe button and as you pass that like button, make sure you tap those on the way to the comment section. Also, make sure you guys go into our free Discord. We do have a free Discord linked in the description to help you guys with your Dynasty Fantasy Football teams, Redraft Fantasy Football teams, Best Ball Fantasy Football teams, everything you need. All in that Discord. Oh, and by the way, it's free to join. There is no risk to join that because it's absolutely free, $0.00. So make sure you go do that. Caleb, if they want some content from you, because you're going to be launching a bunch of content here in the next couple months as the redraft season approaches, where can they find you at?
Yeah, we got signed up by the good old 4for4 channel over on YouTube. So we will be making content on 4for4, and I still make content for DLF, and then you can find me on X at Caleb Niemi. So or on the League FFB whenever Andrew invites me. So those are everywhere you can find me and my content.
There you go. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you joining me today, and appreciate everybody for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. Till then, peace out.